Hey everybody, welcome to today's update on Daily IoT. I'm continuing to work on migrating my project over to local compilation. That's what I'm going to be spending my time on tonight. But I was just thinking the other night that I thought it would be interesting to show some of the behind the scenes, as it were, of Particle Console and Losant, of how I'm keeping track of our test puck that I have on my desk here, and sort of what goes into in the particle ecosystem, what goes into getting firmware ready, pushing it up to their system, and then being able to update devices with it. So I put together, this isn't an in-depth tutorial on how to set up a particle product, but just shows a little bit of the, like I said, behind the scenes of what I get to see inside of the Particle Console as around firmware and devices and products and stuff like that. And so I just put together a little bit of a screencast going through some of that stuff that I wanted to share with you so you could see what some of that stuff involves. And so let's just get right into it. Here it is. Okay, so I wanted to just give you a quick tour around what the console looks like for setting up a product. It's not a full tutorial of how to set things up. I just wanted you to see what I see when I log into the Particle Console. And so I'm on my products page here. You can see that I have two products set up. This IoT button was one that I set up a while ago when I was first messing around with this. But the stat display is our actual hockey puck product. And so it lists your products here on the main products dashboard, and we'll go ahead and click into the stat display. And that brings us to this screen, which shows us our devices. And you can see that I have two devices set up underneath of this product. I've got the Hockey Photon, which is the actual puck that we have been testing with. And then I have this Microcast Photon, which is my development Photon, which you can see from this little icon here. You can see that this device has been marked as a development device. This means this device will not receive automatic product firmware updates. And so the Hockey Photon, you can see, is running version 1 of the firmware, and I can upload new versions of the firmware. I'll show you that in just a second, and they will automatically be loaded onto that Photon the next time that it checks in and connects to the Particle Cloud. And so you can see it has things like the IDs of the photons, the owner, and I'm using this beta groups functionality, which is really cool, and I'm really excited about it. You can create new groups here, but you can see that I've created a beta testers group, and that's really handy for when you want to release firmware, and I'll show you that again in just a second. But some things that you can do here from the dashboard: I can mark a device as development, I can unclaim it, remove it, and so lots of options here. And remember, I didn't have to create any of this. I get all of this for free out of the box with the Particle ecosystem, which is really cool. So the last thing that I wanted to show you in here in the console is the firmware tab. So let's go ahead and click on that. Okay, and so this is the tab where we can manage our firmware releases. You can see that I've uploaded this version 0.0.1 bin. And even though I'm calling it version 0.0.1, the Particle ecosystem doesn't number versions that way. It does not use semantic versioning. You can see right here that it's just version 1. And so in Particle, the versions are just integers starting with 1. So the next version will be 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have to choose an integer value regardless of what I'm referring to it internally to my business per se. And so this was the initial firmware. You can give it a title, which was initial firmware, and a little description of what it does. And once you've uploaded it, you can then release it. And so you can click upload here to upload a new version of the firmware. Again, just give it a title, description, and a version number. They don't have to be sequential. So I could make my next version, version 4, as far as Particle is concerned. I don't know why you do that, but it is an option. Once you've uploaded the firmware, you just come over here and you click on this Release Firmware. And it says releasing a firmware sets a binary as the preferred firmware version for targeted devices in this product fleet. So in my case, I have this beta testers group, which allows me to release firmware to just specific groups of devices based on the group that they're in. And so I can release this to beta testers or the product default being what every device would get if it's not assigned to a specific group. And so that's all you do. You assign a release to group or product default, you click next, and you go through this, and that's how you release firmware. So when I want to create the next iteration of the firmware, all I'm going to do is upload the binary that has the new features in it. I'll label it version 2, and then I'll release it again to beta testers, because that's, again, what my hockey photon is for now. And so that is just a quick overview of what's going on in the particle console area, the back end of all this. The other thing I wanted to show you briefly is the Losant dashboard. I built this a little while back. I've modified it a little bit, but this is allowing me to keep tabs on whether the device is actually updating when I expect it to, and just gives me a quick, I can look, the last update was about 15 minutes ago. I can see all the check-in times to see how they're comparing. Is it right on the hour? How much drift am I getting? Which I'm gonna get some drift. You can see, like, right now, my hour is at like 9 minutes after the hour, but if I scroll way back here, 6 minutes after the hour. And part of that is just, it takes time to reach out to the API, grab the updated stats and pull them down, and then I'm sleeping for an hour. So every one of those is a couple of seconds of drift, and that's fine, but it's something that, you know, this called out to me that I wasn't really thinking about. And then I can have a little quick visual here. This is an interesting outlier. It checked in 3 times back to back right here. And so I don't know if that was because I was not able to connect to the cloud at that particular time, and so it tried again. And so I need to do some testing around what my firmware does when it can't get a response from the Losant backend delivering the stats. And so kind of an interesting thing there that I would never have known about if I didn't have this little dashboard in Losant. And so, but otherwise you can see every hour on the hour I'm getting updates. And so everything is looking really good there. And so just some things to give you an insight into what's going on in the back end of how I'm keeping an eye on things and how I manage firmware and stuff through the Particle ecosystem. So as you can see, Particle brings a lot to the table as far as managing firmware and having the ability to target certain devices and groups and things like that. All of that comes built in that I don't have to build myself while working on a product. And so I really like that. The trade-offs are, you know, you're buying into that system, right? And so I'm gonna establish my flow through that if I ever need to switch off devices, now I'm gonna have to come up with some other way to update my devices remotely. And so there's some trade-offs there, and I'm still navigating. I'm not saying I have the best solution here, but this is how I'm going to proceed and keep making progress and see how it goes. And so that's it for today's update. Question of the day: have you done any product work where you had to update remotely, and did you use a specific tool or utility for that? I know that Platform.io does some of that. I looked into that a little bit, but do you know of any other ways that are out of the box packaged to help you do firmware updates over the air on embedded devices? If you do, stick them down in the comments. I would love to look at those and do some more research and learn more about it. I would really appreciate that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you on tomorrow's update of Daily IoT, the show where together we're learning how to make the Internet of Things one day at a time.